Good evening, the special city council meeting agenda. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The May 20th, 2020 City Council meeting will be conducted pursuant to the provisions of the Governor's Executive Order N-2920. Mr. McKinney, will you please read the...
Yes. Pursuant to the Governor's Executive Order dated March 17th, 2020, the City Council is authorized to hold public meetings via teleconferencing and make meetings accessible electronically to all members of the public seeking to observe and to address the legislative body. All Brown Act provisions that require the physical presence of City Council members or the public for City Council meetings are waived. If you're watching the live stream and wish to make a comment during oral communications or on a specific item, you may call 909-394-6206, and it is also on the screen on TV before the closure of public comment on the agenda.
A public agenda packet is available for your review on the city's website, www.sandimascal.gov, or by contacting the city clerk's office at cityclerk@sandimascal.gov. Okay. Madam City Clerk, would you please read the roll?
Mayor Badar.
Here.
Councilmember Bertone. Here. Councilmember Ebner.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Viana.
Here.
Councilmember Weber.
Here.
Let the record show all 5 council members are in attendance.
Also, let it be known that Councilman John Ebner is calling in, who's available by telephone. Oral communications. We'll give it about a minute.
Thank you for calling. You're live.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. This is Gary Enderle. First of all, as you know, or some of you know, I've asked that our City Council budget meetings be televised, so I'm glad to see that we're able to do that this year. But with that said, I do have some problems with the way this has all happened. I don't know if the council members can discuss my concerns, so I'll address my questions to the acting city manager and our city attorney. First of all, Brad, I know you've been thrown right in the middle of the fire, so none of this is personally addressed to you, but addressed to the issues and the problems, not just the ones today, but the ongoing ones that we've had, in my opinion, in the city as far as communicating to the public. Now, I understand this is a special budget session meeting, but everyone should have had the opportunity to look over the proposed budget before the meeting, since this is such an important thing. As we all know, we went out for a sales tax increase and we didn't get that, and I feel that part of that problem is because of the lack of communications that we gave the public on that particular measure. So I think it's even that much more important now that we communicate to the public so that they can see what's going on in the city, where the needs are, and some of the cuts that you're obviously going to have to make in the future to be within whatever that budget is. But where my concern comes in is why the budget information wasn't posted with the agenda when it came out. I don't know if the city attorney can address that question or not.
Gary, yeah, we unfortunately the information wasn't completed. The PowerPoint presentation, we just didn't get it done, and as early as I would have liked. So we did get it out as early as possible. In the future, we plan to have multiple meetings regarding the budget, and we will be sure to get that information out with the agenda packet.
Brad, is that a violation of Brown Act?
Mayor, would you like me to respond to the question?
Yes, please.
No, it's not. The only thing that's necessary under the Brown Act in order to hold a meeting is an agenda to be posted for a special meeting 24 hours before the meeting. So the materials that are provided to the council for this meeting have been provided and were available to the public at the same time they were provided to the council, and that's not a Brown Act violation.
Okay, well, I was just concerned that obviously it wasn't part of the agenda, so the public couldn't see it ahead of time. And I think the council got it at the same time I did, which was around 3 o'clock this afternoon, which only gives you 3 hours to be able to review it and hopefully have some questions when you come to the meeting. Like I said, I understand that it's budget session that you're going to be asking all these questions, but I certainly feel everybody should have the opportunity to see it prior to 3 hours before the meeting. The other concerns that I have is, how was the public informed about the meeting that you're having tonight? I probably can answer those questions myself, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but I know it was on the website as far as under a scheduled meeting. But what I didn't see was it on the weekly email? I don't even know if the weekly email updates are going out still, but certainly the homepage of the city's website, it could have been put on there, it was not on there. That's the first thing everybody sees. Certainly it's the first thing I look at when I go on the website to see the different categories that you have and things that are coming up. Again, this was not posted there. It could have been also included in all of these coronavirus newsletters that go out every day. The public could have been informed about it that way too. So those were just some thoughts that I had as far as getting the word out to people. If you want the public to be informed, you need to inform the public. I don't think we're doing a very good job of that. And this is just another case of what I see as lack of communication, not just to the public, but in this particular case to the council to give a fair time to review the budget that went out. The other thing, sitting at home watching on TV, as you know, we cannot see the slides or anything or read them. So I'd like to have something in front of me to go along with you. I would just like to have had it a lot sooner than 3 o'clock this afternoon. With that said, I'm through. Thank you, and good luck at your meeting tonight.
Thank you. Sean?
No.
Yeah, we'll give it about a minute. Okay, we'll get underway. It's a study session, staff presentation for the preliminary 2020-21 budget and proposed capital projects session 1. Brad?
Yes, good evening, Mayor, City Council members. Tonight, staff will be presenting the preliminary budget developed per prior council direction to include operations, maintenance, and projects that department directors feel are in the best interest of the city for their departments. I do want to apologize for getting this information out to you late. It's been pretty hectic getting this presentation and everything together, but in the future we will have the information attached to the agenda and materials that go out. Staff began working on this year's budget in January 2020. However, as you're aware, this budget process has been difficult due to many factors. Hit with many uncertainties surrounding COVID-19 virus, staff was tasked with basically developing 2 different budgets. The one being presented tonight in an emergency budget that includes only critical operating and maintenance costs and projects that directors feel are critical to the health of the city's infrastructure. The main goal of tonight's presentation is to get direction from council on the use of reserves during this unprecedented time due to the pandemic and emergency situation. Another goal is to allow directors to explain the importance of projects that they feel are in the best interest of the city, and to gather input and direction from council to implement revisions to the preliminary budget. One of the biggest challenges with this year's budget is revenue projections, which were discussed at the last council meeting, but included in tonight's presentation to identify the comparison of revenues estimated to be collected in fiscal year 1920 or 2019-20 and fiscal year 2020-21 compared to our last actuals, which were in 2018-19. As you can see, all the revenue sources have drastic reductions for a total of a negative 12.7% or roughly 3.2 million in fiscal year 2019-20 and a negative 11.71% or roughly 3 million in 2020-21. The revenue projections provided were developed in consultation with several of our consultants, economic forecast, and in review with historical trends. The historical transfer in and out of the general fund slide is included because it is important to note how some restricted funds are transferred into the general fund to cover staff administrative costs for projects. Also, a large amount of the general fund gets transferred out for various funds assigned to specific project equipment and bond repayments. Since 2015-16, the city has transferred into the general fund 2.2 million from special funds for reimbursement of administrative costs, has transferred out 4.3 million towards paying off the outstanding Civic Center bond, and has transferred out roughly 14 million to fund various street and park projects, equipment, along with supplementing the landscape district fund. The funded projects and equipment during this time include the downtown revitalization project, Foothill Bridge widening project, Golden Hills Road realignment, Cienega Boulevard, San Dimas Avenue, pavement preservation and storm drain maintenance costs, Villa Verde playground equipment, Marshall Park project, Pioneer Park equipment, and median projects. The major equipment purchases included the telephone and computer equipment upgrades in the city, new boom and dump trucks, new CalSense irrigation controllers, and two-way radio system. As previously mentioned, we are in unprecedented times, and unless otherwise directed by council, we'll need to utilize emergency reserves to continue to provide the services, projects, and quality infrastructure to the community. This slide illustrates the city's reserve levels in 2018-19 at 82% of the general fund operating expenditures. Given the projected decrease in revenues and recognized decrease in some service program areas due to the effects of COVID-19, the reserves are projected to be at 72% at the end of fiscal year 2019-20. In the preliminary budget presented to you tonight, there's a couple scenarios. If only operation and maintenance was included, no projects, the reserve level would drop to 64%. If operation, maintenance, and all projects that are included in this budget were included, reserves would be at a 55%. If we presented only the operation and maintenance with no projects in the emergency budget I mentioned before, the other budget that we're not presenting tonight, the reserve level will be at 66%. However, this does include some big cuts, one of which I'm sure Hector will address in his presentation is the potential closure of the rec center due to ongoing maintenance and a substantial costs that go along with that. So those have been looked at in our emergency budget. And lastly, if we present the full emergency budget, which includes critical projects, maintenance and operation costs, and projects that were identified by the directors as critical to our infrastructure, the reserve would be at 64%. The main point of this slide is to illustrate that we are in an emergency and a portion of the reserves can be proposed to be used. Direction from council on the amount of which we reuse reserves is very important in moving forward to finalizing a budget. And hopefully staff can get some direction tonight on that.
Brad, I'm just gonna say for what it's worth, I'm probably not gonna feel comfortable giving any direction tonight. I haven't had an opportunity to really digest this, as was mentioned earlier. I personally, I don't know what council's desire will be at the end of this, but I probably would want to continue this to next week and have the opportunity to fully digest what you're presenting and understand the numbers, because it's a lot of information in a very short period of time.
I have a question for Brad, an overall question. So on the last slide that you had where you had the various percentages in a chart form, so was that next to the last column the amount of general fund expenditures? Is that what that was?
The next,
In the previous slide.
yes, the one that I talked about, the percentage of reserves that would be left?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, that is the general fund expenditures.
Okay. And my only question that I'm trying to just understand, Brad, was in the that's the slide we're talking about. Is that first column, like the second item, funding new projects in landscape district, and that number is like lower than the general fund operating expenses? What does that mean?
That is actually, that second to last is actually the amount of general fund reserves that would be left if we funded all of the projects, O&M costs, and landscape district that are in this full budget.
Got it. Okay. That's in the full. So it's the full. All of these are. Well, you know what? Let me frame a question and ask it when I can articulate it better. But well, that helps a lot, though. Just knowing that last column is the reserves. I wasn't picking up on that. So thank you.
I really wanted to show that where we're at now, projected at the end of this fiscal year, is 72%. If we don't do any projects that are in this budget right here, just O&M, we'll have $15,914,000 in the reserve, which is 64%. If we do everything that's in this budget, including all of the projects, we'll have 13.7, which is 55% left in reserves. In the emergency budget, if we just do operating and maintenance and no projects, we'll have 66%, or that 16 million in reserves. So that's kind of how that's laid out.
Thank you. That explains it. Okay, great. Now I can understand the bar chart a little bit better, I think, on the next slide. Thank you.
I have a question here on page 6 of this, where it says profit and loss and general fund reserve outlook. Underneath where it says you have those figures in the brackets, is that the amount of reserves we're using?
Correct.
That's the amount?
Yes.
Okay.
So in this slide, it is important to note that given the current increases in operating and maintenance costs, reserves were already, based on last year's budget, going to be used to cover increasing expenses prior to the COVID-19 effect. And that's what I wanted to show in this slide. And this graph illustrates the general fund reserve balance in fiscal year 2022-23 if no new projects were included in the future budget. However, in fiscal year 18-19 and 19-20 already include our current approved projects. However, 2023 includes only operating and maintenance costs, which is not sustainable to keep the city in the standard that we'd like. But I wanted to illustrate that even with no projects moving forward, we're dipping into reserves. So long term, this is going to be something that we need to address long term. The next slide graph illustrates the general fund reserve balance with proposed projects. And as you can see, if we continue the operation and maintenance increases and all the projects identified in this preliminary budget and projects that have been identified in the future years out to fiscal year 2022-23, our reserve balance goes down to $216,000 at the end of fiscal year 2022-23.
I think we can say this is dead on arrival, right?
Yes, but per council direction, we wanted to present you all the projects that are out there and let you guys be fully transparent on what are some of the projects that our directors feel are important to the city. It is also important to remember that these revenues and expenditures are projections and have been, in many years, off. And for this reason, no matter what budget ultimately gets approved by council, staff would like to bring back a budget update to council in September to identify if the projections were accurate and adjust the budget accordingly. Because right now they're all projections. Nobody knows when the economy is going to start picking up. So no matter what budget we end up ultimately adopting, I'd really like to bring this back in September and have that discussion. Either it's good or worse. But I just want to note how quickly these reserves can be drawn down and how important a new revenue source, one or the other, is going to be for the success of the city in the future. So now, since I've provided such great news and projections, I want our department directors, administrative services manager, they're going to go through each of their department budgets. And I want to highlight the city's executive team who has worked tirelessly on preparing multiple budgets while continuing to provide vital services and programs to this community during these unprecedented times. I'm very proud of this team's dedication, creative ideas, and effort and leadership. And as we navigate through these difficult times, which I'm sure we're going to feel the effects for years to come, it's important to have individuals that are flexible, creative, and dedicated like we have here. So I want to personally thank the department heads. I know we kind of put this together at the last minute so we could get a full picture for the council. It was a lot of work, but I want to thank them personally for all their help. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Administrative Services Manager Michael O'Brien, who's going to walk through the Administrative Services budget.
I just had a question really quick for Councilman Weber. What were you looking at?
I think that's a good question.
Sure. So I went forward to page, I believe it's 9 on the slide.
Yes.
It's just going over the administrative services. I'm sorry, let me talk in here. So this is just basically our org chart for our department. So we're led by the Assistant City Manager / Director of Administrative Services, and we have our Finance and HR component, or our division, along with Information Technology, Public Information, and Housing. So what we want to go over is just some of the essential functions of our department. We basically handle the city management, city clerk operations, human resources, financial management and planning, city attorney, contract management, housing, economic development, information technology, risk management, and public information. So when we go over in a slide in a few minutes, the totals or the summary of our expenditures, it's going to include these cost centers, which are detailed in your full budget. But it's basically the cost centers of 4110, which is the city council budget, 4120, which is the city manager budget, 4150 for administrative services, 4170 city attorney, 4180 economic development, and 4190 general services. Just want to go over some of our accomplishments from this last budget year. We were able to replace all our printers and copiers and actually developed an annual cost savings of about $20,000 by getting rid of our old machines and taking on a new lease and maintenance contract. So that's getting us more efficiency and better production from our printers, but also cutting costs. We did just recently release this last week an online bill payment platform where our customers can go online and make payments. We're installing a high definition equipment for our streaming service. We've increased in the past couple of years our interest revenues through diversification and taking advantage of what were increased interest rates at the time. We also just got done refinancing our Civic Center bond, which will create annual savings in our bond interest costs, which we anticipate after you factor in the cost of issuance to be about $30,000 a year. We enhanced budgeting tools to hopefully project more accurate budgets. We added credit card processing to our parking meters, and clarify by parking meters, I mean the stations where you can buy your overnight parking permits. So the public can now use credit card to make those purchases. We issued over 22,134 business licenses, issued 674 annual parking permits, developed the coyote management plan, increased our social media platform, and expanded our homeless program. So now to the numbers. So in our administrative services budget, you'll see there is an increase from the 1920 proposed budget, going up from $1,489,32 to $1,602,972. The reason for that is some reorganization that we've done between ourselves and community development. We've moved our parking compliance operations over to community development, and we've taken on the housing operations. So we included 3 new staff members into our division and removed the senior code compliance officer over to community development, along with the parking enforcement part-timers. With that, though, we do have an additional $150,000 of administrative revenues that come from Fund 34, the housing low mod, that comes to help supplement those costs. So net-wise, there's actually a little bit of savings that was generated from separated employees no longer having to pay that longevity pay. In services and supplies, there is a slight reduction, basically because the election costs are not in this fiscal year. However, there are some anticipated increases in the city attorney fees, but overall, there's a reduction of about $28,725 in services and supplies. There is one proposed staffing adjustment. We are putting in this budget to promote the part-time PIO, or Public Information Officer, to a full-time position. The increase in demand to put out more information on a more regular basis is making it a need to have someone there every day. So we are proposing that. The additional cost of that promotion from a part-time to full-time position would be about $36,000, including salary and benefits.
Michael, I'm sorry, what is that position currently working?
I believe they're working 30 hours a week, so it would add about 10 hours a week, so a full day and a couple hours.
Are they working 5 days a week right now?
Are they working 5 days a week right now? No.
No, they work 4 days a week on a part-time basis, and they're really the one is putting out all the public information. They're working on updating the website. In the budget, we are proposing a different website platform as well, because we have had a lot of transparency issues with our old one and access issues. They are working with Parks and Rec on the newsletter, recreation guides. They oversee all our social media, our Facebook, our Twitter. They're developing the drafts for the press releases that are going out daily during COVID. In the future, given that Michael kind of touched on, one of the achievements is we are updating our high def playout system that'll allow us for council meetings, streaming being high def, but also allow us to remotely Facebook Live or throw onto the TV channel from different events in the community. So she'll be able to go out there and do live interviews, record all that type of stuff, which would, I believe, be a benefit to the community. In plans, I would like her to create an Instagram account, really get out there on multiple platforms, where right now she is limited because she's on a part-time basis.
And how much would that be in total?
It's an additional
$36,000 basic salary and
$36,000
benefits.
to make that position a full-time position.
What is it? $36,000 to make it a full-time, but what is the position now?
It's a part-time public information officer.
Okay,
So
but what's the
the
total?
salary was, with salary and benefits, I think it was about $45,000. So it had another $36,000 with full-time salary and benefits.
We're talking pretty close to 80,000.
Yeah, between salary and benefits, with cafeteria plans and PERS and all those things that go along with it, it would increase it by about that much.
Is that the expectation of that position? Because I thought when this position was created originally, it took some time to see the position and actually produce things that were tangible to the community. And my understanding was then that this person was going to be out in the community putting out information, But it seemed like for the first several months of this position, that's not what happened. And so if an additional 10 hours a week is, supposedly going to get us to having that person out in the community during the different days and times that these events happen, is that factually going to be the deliverable, or is that person just going to be in the office working Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and producing content?
No, my goal, if she's has the hours to be, or she's going to that position is going to be out in the community, at the community events, at different, potentially meeting with, I know economic development's a big thing that's going to be pushed, meeting with those type of individuals, those businesses, being that arm that we have in the city manager's office that can reach out and be at those events when myself or other staff can't be. And with the access to be able to put that stuff on social media and now will be a huge asset and reason for it to be at all those events too.
And then when you refer to the website, this is the new website, I guess. So you're talking about a third website, I guess, since my term that you would be transitioning to for all those reasons you discussed earlier.
Yes, so we have a quote here for a different website platform. Unfortunately, the one that we're using now, WordPress, does not allow for easy access, easy updates, and we've had a lot of, some complaints that people have a hard time finding things on the website when they get uploaded. So these new website platforms are just a lot more transparent, accessible, ADA compliant, everything else. So that's one of the reasons. You're right. Prior to me being here, I don't know the whole history. They had a website that kind of got updated, but kind of band-aided to what we had before. Same type of platform. This is more is a state of the art. The new platform that all the different cities are using right now, where the system we're using now is pretty archaic.
Brad, I have a question. So on the website, it definitely needs the upgrade that you're talking about, and the ability to search a little bit more productively. In these tough times, though, I just wonder. I'd be interested to know how much that's actually going to cost. I know it's in the budget, but I want to see how much it costs. And just from experience, sometimes consultants come in and they charge you a ton of money. And I'm sure it's worth it, but on the other hand, it'd be interesting to see, what we're getting for our money and really vet that before we sign up a contract. The other thing is, the other comment was, I just wanted to also echo what Ryan said. I think if I understood correctly, it was a little unclear what everybody said, but it sounded like Nicolette or somebody's going to be out in the community at events and maybe posting them on social media as they happen. Was that sort of the idea, that transitioning to a full-time position? Yes,
that is the idea. And the reason we have the website in the budget is proposed at roughly $30,000 of what is in there. We have gotten quotes from multiple website platform providers. So we would go out to bid, and it could come in lower that, but that is the cost to convert all of our existing content to a new platform, new look, new feel, which I think would be a benefit. And again, you're right. These are decisions that we need to have with our budget. We're making a budget per what all the directors felt would be a benefit to the community, and then we'll come back after we get some feedback from you guys on what you feel like is important, what's not, and we will revise this budget because we are in an emergency and a rough time right now. So that's the reason why it is in there in the position.
Okay.
All right, I just will say that over the last few months, since Nicolette's been out in the field, and along with the COVID thing, with the press releases and everything, I've had many comments talking about, the work that she has been doing and providing with the photos and things like that. So a lot of people, feel like they're getting a real solid product from the city because of what she's doing. So
I'm not, I don't want to downgrade that in any way, shape, or form. I think she's doing a pretty good job at that.
I appreciate that. I mean, we've gotten calls from other residents in different communities, city employees in different cities that actually check our press releases that go out daily, and they've been really complimentary of our PR press that's going out.
All right, if we're ready to continue on. So this next summation regards our general services. And when we talk about general services, what we're basically talking about is those things that don't have to necessarily be targeted at one division. It's really affects every department. So we kind of bundle this up in what we call our general services cost center. This includes things like our audits, our computer software, maintenance, equipment maintenance for our copiers or the printers and the machines, employee benefits, our general and property insurance, operations of our cable channel, newsletters that go out, our internet and phone maintenance costs, Wi-Fi, our GIS system licenses. Those type of things are what you'll see going through these accounts. Basically, there's a total increase in this next budget from the prior one of about $313,548. And just to kind of give you an idea of what is causing those increases, some of the main factors are PERS costs are looking to go up about $170,000 over the prior year. Our general and property insurance will go up about $49,000. We have, like Brad mentioned, the budget for updating our city website, about $30,000. We also are hoping to do some enhancements to our cybersecurity to continue to try to protect our vital information. That's going to be about $25,000 estimated cost. We're looking to automate with our Laserfish system to try to go more paperless, do more authorizations and signings through an automated process. So that's part of that. That's about $15,000. Benefits with the proposed staffing, there will be you'll see throughout this presentation. There would be about $70,000 in additional benefit costs, mostly for cafeteria, which is what we use to pay for health insurance costs. Credit card processing fees, there's a little bit of adjustment. Parks and Rec is looking to change from what's the platform? From their current ActiveNet, thank you. From their current software to Civic Rec. And with that, we'd be using the merchant processing company that we use for our other credit card transactions. So instead of that cost being shown under the ActiveNet and Recreation, it's been added to our merchant fees. So what they would normally be charging processing fees for that account is now being shown here. So that's an additional $25,000 over what was previously done. And that's pretty much that, President. So equipment purchases, these are just kind of ones that aren't generally to one department, but computer or desktop equipment just for in case there's breakdowns and we need to make a replacement. So this could either be right on budget or really below it, but we put aside $12,700 just to make sure we have money to cover those type of expenses that may come up. Parks and Rec and Public Works have been working together on trying to find a service order and asset management software system where they can, when we have a call for service, we can track when it was received, when our crew went out and fixed it, when it was repaired, and then informing the resident that made the request to let them know that it was completed. Also with asset management, we're talking things like, having a plan together of when we're going to change all the light bulbs or when we're going to, do maintenance on vehicles or maintenance on streets, just basically a big system to have that all incorporated in there so we can easily track and manage our assets throughout the city. And then
just if I could add on to that, the asset management, one of the other reasons just to kind of simplify that system is if we have an asset, say a drinking fountain out there that we have had to do multiple repairs on it, 10 different repairs, we can quickly assess with this system, should we continue to do repairs or should we just replace that asset? So we can analyze and have analytics behind our decisions on replacing infrastructure versus repairing infrastructure. So that's part of what that tool would provide and why it's being proposed. Sorry, Michael.
No problem. And then for telephones or cell phone replacement is really what that is. 8,200 we're setting aside for that. And then we have a program we started with some of our vehicles a few years ago, which was a lease to own. So we have $11,615 that we have to continue to pay until that lease is completed and then we officially own the vehicle. So I believe there's about one more year past this one of payments to be made and then that will be completed. So in total, the equipment purchases that we've listed on our Fund 70 is about $132,515. And that concludes mine, and then I'll pass it on to Andy for police services.
Good evening, council, residents, and city staff. As you know, the public safety budget is a primary component of the city budget. So this will necessarily be just a very high altitude view of the budget. You know, our essential functions are pretty well known, and you might look at this and it would come out, kind of look to be our mission statement. Pretty well established what those functions are. It's obviously not all inclusive, but all those things are important. So in your review of the budget, I'd ask you to just consider those things. A couple of things that I put in here just to highlight some of the things that have been our goals and things that we'd like to continue. On the traffic citation side, it's kind of a sensitive issue sometimes. Traffic tickets is never a popular item with a lot of people, but keeping in mind that there's a direct correlation between our traffic enforcement and injury collisions, I think it's significant to show that our citations are up slightly and our traffic collisions are down significantly over the last 3 years. That was kind of one of my goals as a new captain here at the station, and it seems to be having some effect. To that end, we have also purchased some replacement laser and radar equipment, and that did come out of a part of the budget allocated by the council for equipment purchases. Response times continue to be, I would say, historically low and probably very respectable. I don't know exactly how they compare to surrounding agencies, but I think they would be pretty good. Obviously, these are not the case for every response, but it's an accurate reflection of a full year of average response times. Arrests have been fairly consistent the last 3 years, even with the effects of Prop 47 and things. And our calls for service have been pretty consistent, about 1,000 calls more this year than last year. Staffing levels at the station itself, which I know doesn't directly affect the city staffing, it is something that we're normally required to cover with overtime or do without, and we've done. I couldn't be happier about what our staffing levels are now. We did purchase and install the cameras at Pioneer Park that we discussed. Those should be in service soon. We're working out the technical details and granting access to just the few people that need to have access. ALPR is automated license plate readers. We now have 2 cars in the city that have that equipment. Those are $5,000 per year per car. It's for the folks that are familiar with what those do, it's a great boon for identifying criminals, not only immediately when a car is encountered, but also for crime investigations. And then from a liability standpoint and a practicality standpoint, we're dealing more and more with mentally ill people on the street, and so we have had a lot of deputies go through crisis intervention training this year. This is just a main overview. I'll just talk about the main that first line there, and then turn it over to Brad. That does not reflect any change in service level. It's essentially the same number of deputies in patrol and on the CAT team and all of our detectives. those numbers have remained the same. Any of the increases are based on increase in the liability trust fund fees and the overall auditor controller estimate that sets the contract city rates. So other than that, I will turn it over to Brad, unless you have any questions.
Thank you, Andy.
Okay.
In that the first line, the public safety contracts have gone up 5.6% across the board for the sheriff's department, and that is included in this budget. The liability trust fund is has gone up 11%. And then the bigger item that I want to talk to in this slide is our services and supplies, which includes our Inland Valley Humane Society contract. The Inland Valley Humane Society revamped their billing model this year, or proposed to revamp their billing model, which decreased their guaranteed revenue that they gave the cities for animal-related fees. Their new gross cost revenue model would increase our annual cost from our net cost of $157,000 to $251,000, so a $94,000 increase. However, in the general, what I get from Inland Valley Humane is that they can't guarantee the revenues. They've been continually not receiving that and having to make up with different types of funding or offsetting our lost sunk costs with other agencies. So they're planning on proposing a new model. But given the current financial situation, member cities, including us, had concerns about this increase. And to help reduce the cost for the next year, or possibly the year after that, the board approved an alternative that would only increase our cost by 2.96 CPI increase, which is about $44,600. However, the catch is to take advantage of this alternative, all the cities that are up for renewal, which includes Claremont, Laverne, Glendora, Montclair, Chino, Diamond Bar, Ontario, Pomona, and us, would need to increase to two different fees on our fee structure. The first being unaltered rate for dogs. We currently charge $45 for a license. They want to increase it to $100. A late renewal for dog license from $35 to $60, and late application fee for new dog license from $35 to $60. What Inland Valley is trying to do, and what a lot of their costs, is to reduce the pet overpopulation, which is why they're encouraging the spay and neutering of pets. So that's what they've proposed to us, and I'd like to get some feedback from council on if. The other caveat is all these cities have to agree to increase their fees, and I've talked to at least 5 of them, and they said they're moving forward with a fee increase to take advantage of the reduction in the contract cost, which for us would be about $94,000. However, I don't know, I haven't been in fee discussions or related to the animal fees, so I wanted to bring that to you and get some feedback on if you guys are okay with the fee increase. We'll bring back that fee increase at our next meeting. However, that Inland Valley Humane wants answers from these cities on if that's doable or not.
So what's our cost if we do not agree to the
fee increase? It would be $251,000 would be
and
our.
What is it if we do?
If we do, our cost would be $161,000.
Well, I can just say one thing. If any of the conversations that I had at 9 and 10 o'clock this morning from the general public is an example of what's going on, I got a feeling you'd have quite a few residents saying, don't do anything, because they're very upset and annoyed with the service that they're getting from Inland. And, they are actually just talking about rudeness on the phone. So I think that needs to be, conveyed to their management, because people were, I received at least 3-4 calls this morning for just poor service. And, generally, what do you want us to do?
Thank you.
I agree with the mayor that I've heard nothing but negative feedback regarding services from Inland Valley Humane Society, and they don't respond and they don't respond in a timely manner. I'm also struggling with the fact that we had a number of community members here with their coyote concerns, and there really wasn't a good answer from the Humane Society. I mean, they came to the table, and I appreciated that, but it seems wild to me to think that we potentially still have this coyote issue out in the community, and then we're going to have people pay, for what, $100 now? I mean, that's more than half of what they were, right?
This is for unaltered, so dogs that aren't spayed or neutered.
Right, so someone who had like a AC or AKC champion pet that they wanted to compete with, those are the people that basically would have a kennel club type of pet, would be who this is, right?
Yes.
Yeah, show dogs, stuff like that.
Is that the only fee increase that was unaltered?
It's their goal is to get more pets spayed or neutered, to decrease the over, because their cost is when they take these pets in and house them. There's basically three. It's unaltered rate for dog license from $45 to $100. Late renewal for dog license. So if you don't renew it, there was a late fee for $35. They want to move that to $60 to encourage people to register their pets. And the late application fee for new dog license from $35 to $60. Those three fees, and that's what the Inland Valley says they can, that's a big cost for them, so they won't have as much cost for our service, and they can give us a lower rate if we increase these fees. And they generate revenue from these fees that they can offset our costs.
Well, I can certainly live with the increases. I think especially for unaltered animals, that's the big problem. That's why we have so many animals are euthanized, because people, they don't alter them and then they just expand.
Correct. Sorry, John?
Can I make a comment on that?
Yeah, John.
So my comment is that that's a way too steep of a hike in all the fees. I don't know if I've heard of a late fee of $60 anywhere for anything. I don't know, but so that's kind of high. And when you raise the fees, so I think it's just too high, period. But when you raise the fees like that, you really discourage people from licensing their dogs, altered or if they're increasing the altered as well as the unaltered. You just discourage people from licensing the dogs, so it defeats the purpose. And so they need to do a better job, I think, with the tools they have, or have new tools. But that's $100 is just out there, in my opinion.
Are the fees the same in every city?
They're proposing that those cities that I named, they want the fees to be, I don't know what their actual fees, I don't know if they're at 45. I'd imagine they're a little bit higher because we tend to be on the low end of fees. But I can probably guarantee that they're not at $160, and that's why they're requesting them to go up to those amounts.
No, but what I meant is that will every city have the same fee? I mean,
yes, if they all agree, and that's what they're asking, it's all or nothing. Claremont, Laverne, Glendora, Montclair, Chino, Diamond Bar, Ontario, Pomona, and us would all have the $100 and $60 fee, is what they're requesting.
Have they done any outreach, to anyone about this?
Not that I know of, because I only heard about this earlier this week.
Yeah, I can tell you, a number of the folks, especially the equestrian folks, people that have these dogs, the collies and things like this. I agree with John. It's a significant increase to the fee, and I'd almost propose they go park up at the dog park and start pitching their fee to everybody up there and see how that goes over. I mean, I understand the drawback in terms of the expense potentially to the city, but like the mayor said earlier, if they want more fees, then I think they need to up their game in terms of their service and customer service and response times. I mean, I don't think people feel like they're getting service. It's like we have an animal control humane society, but you call them for a possum in the roof of your garage, and they basically tell you good luck. I mean, it's wild, you know, and the coyotes, there wasn't a lot of answers. I don't know, I haven't yet heard of something where somebody has been thumbs up about the response they received, so, yeah.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is, in what is included in our budget already, because I just got this information on earlier this week, we have the new proposed cost in our budget right now, but I will definitely relay your guys' comments and our residents' concerns. Thank you for sharing, Emmett, to Inland Valley Humane. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our Community Development Director, Henry No, who's going to present his department.
Thank you, Mr. McKinney. Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. The Community Development Department includes 3 divisions: the Planning Division, the Building and Safety Division, as well as the Code Compliance Division. Before I get into the essential functions of the Community Development Department and our proposed budget, I wanted to inform the City Council and the public that there are 4 guiding principles that I've been trying, since I've been hired, to instill into our department. And those 4 guiding principles include achieving excellence through teamwork. And it's essential and to the success of any organization, including ours, that we collaborate and we communicate. We need to be committed to the community, which is providing exceptional customer service, not only to the external customers, but to the internal. And this is done by committing to take the extra effort to help solve and resolve problems and to help facilitate any projects or any concerns that the public or council may have. We want to make sure that we do the right thing the right way. And in doing this, we want to review our processes and try and streamline those processes to be more efficient. But at the same time, we do not want to ever compromise our integrity. And the lifeline in any organization is our employees. And to that effect, training and leadership is vital. And I want to make sure that our Community Development Department staff is trained, and I want to empower my employees to take ownership and pride of their job, not only to support one another, but to the community. With that, some of the essential functions of community development includes improving the community while preserving our small town character. Community engagement, we want to have transparency in our processes and projects. We entitle and process development projects from the entitlement process, plan check, inspections, and finals. It includes advanced planning. These are the city's guiding documents, such as the general plan, which includes our housing element, the development code, and the future downtown specific plan. In building, our essential function is to uphold the federal, state, and local building codes. And in my short time here, I know the city of San Dimas has a lot of community pride. And with that is a key component of that is code compliance, or I'd like to say community preservation. And property maintenance and making sure that people are maintaining their properties are vital for that, as well as parking enforcement. Some of the major accomplishments in this current year, community development has either been approved or conceptually approved for 2 grant fundings. These include the SB2 grants and the local early action plan, which is a LEAP grant, for a total of $310,000. This will help assist in funding the housing element update, the objective design standards, as well as our proposed downtown specific plan. In this past fiscal year, we've received approximately 600 planning applications. This includes conditional use permits, development plans, tree removals, etc. In addition, we've either in the process or completed various municipal code text amendments, including the SP23 moratorium, the accessory dwelling unit ordinance, and the large family daycare ordinance. one of the major projects that we entitled this past fiscal year is the 12-unit subdivision that's located on Walnut Avenue. In building safety, we have received approximately 400 plan checks and issued 780 building permits and have completed over 4,100 inspection types. We've also started the construction of 4 major projects, the Memory Care Building located in Villa Verde, and 3 residential communities in Saddle Creek, Cody Lane, and Commercial Street. The Code Compliance Department has either opened or has ongoing cases that includes approximately 1,100 cases. We've successfully resolved 925 violations. As previously mentioned, we reorganized the parking enforcement to be located under community development from administration. We initiated and completed the community outreach to our downtown area to help clean up our alley maintenance, or alleyways. And then we initiated and will hopefully complete soon the formalized tree pruning standards. Some of the major future objectives, as I previously mentioned, the housing element update and the downtown specific plan are vital for our organization, not only in community development. For the downtown specific plan, as everyone knows, the Gold Line Station, which is coming, and the state legislation that's coming down to increase housing production around high transit stations, it's vital that we get the downtown specific plan initiated and completed. Also, in the short time I've been here, I've heard a number of times from council as well as the community, one of their main goals is to try and revitalize and re-energize our downtown area. And the downtown specific plan is that guiding document that will help facilitate in completing that vision for our downtown area. In a perfect world, as Brad had mentioned, because of the COVID-19, I would have liked to have proposed the comprehensive general plan update and in the future also a comprehensive development code update. These have been needed for a number of years and hasn't been accomplished, but the cost for, the approximate cost that I've received estimations for the comprehensive general plan update is about $2 to $2.5 million. With the current conditions, my two main projects are the housing element and the downtown specific plan, because the downtown specific plan will facilitate the downtown area and the revitalization of that area. And with that, we've received grant funding, as I said, from specific grants to help fund that. In the future, one of my major goals is actually to collaborate with the other divisions and departments within the city and to try and see if there's additional grant funding that we can collaborate with Parks and Rec, Public Works, as well as community development to see if there's any funding to help fund and pay for the general plan comprehensive update. In addition, we've been looking at trying to standardize and streamline our processes with the goal of trying to reduce our review times by, at a minimum, 25%. Some of the entitlements that we've completed, or we're trying to complete in this fiscal year, are 3 residential developments. That includes Amelia and Gladstone and St. George, which are 6-unit subdivisions, as well as the 299 East Foothill subdivision, which is a proposed 16-unit subdivision. Some of the construction projects, major construction projects that are either under construction or we're looking to get permits issued for are Brasada, which is located north of Foothill and Cataract, the Walnut development that I previously mentioned, Max's Restaurant located on Foothill, as well as the Dixie Rose Restaurant on Bonita, and a new pizza restaurant located on Village Court, which is looking to locate at the former Cass and Cleaver site.
Which one is the Walnut?
That's the John Begin project, the 12-unit, yeah. In community development, we have two cost centers, 4308 for community development and 4311 for building and safety. So the proposed budget for the fiscal year 2021, majority of our approximate $2 million budget is $1.5 million of that is for salary employees. From the previous fiscal year, you'll notice in 1920, there was a reduction from about $1.5 million to $1.4 million for this proposed fiscal year, and that's mainly due to me taking over my position from my predecessor's position, and he was the assistant city manager for community development. So with that, there was a reduction of approximately $80,000. The approximate $600,000 for service and supplies, I just wanted to note the two major items that, major projects that are within this budget are the downtown specific plan and the objective design standards. If you take those two projects out, that revises our budget to approximately $190,000, which would have been a 60% reduction. Those two projects, like I mentioned, were majority funded by grants, as well as their one-time costs. But without those, there would have been a 60% reduction. And if you take those out of our department total, it reduces that to 1.6 million, or an 11% reduction from the previous fiscal year. And that completes my presentation.
Is there any possibility that those grants, due to the circumstances throughout the state and throughout the county, the financial prediction that everybody's in, is there any possibility that those grants would be pulled back?
Not that I've heard, no.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. The Public Works Department consists of 15 full-time employees and 2 part-time employees, and we're divided into essentially 3 divisions. The gray is our streets maintenance division, the blue is our engineering division, and then the yellow is our administration or our environmental services division. The department currently has 3 vacancies within it, which is about 20% of our allocated staffing positions. So our essential function, one of our primary functions is to maintain about $330 million in public infrastructure. So this infrastructure includes roads, 122 centerline miles of streets, 100 miles of sewer pipeline, 40 miles of storm drain main lines with over 900 catch basins, as well as city street lights, traffic signals, and street signs. Our maintenance functions are set up as routines as much as possible to be cost effective and to ensure public safety. And as an example, all of our 36 traffic signals in the city have monthly, biannual, and annual maintenance services, each with varying levels of complexity. In addition, an emergency maintenance service will be performed if a power outage occurs or other report of malfunction is received. Public Works also schedules and manages capital improvement projects to construct new infrastructure or reconstruct and repair existing infrastructure that needs more than just routine maintenance. We typically complete between $3 to $5 million in capital improvement projects each year. And in the screen you can see one is Via Verde Avenue, which is scheduled for next year, or proposed for next year. Another of Public Works' functions is to ensure the public's safety as they use the city's infrastructure to move through their day. In conjunction with Parks and Recreation's facility and landscape maintenance crews, we have employees that are on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Our crews provide traffic control for emergencies, remove down trees or other obstructions that block the street or sidewalk, and have worked to assist with other emergencies such as flood protection.
You said you're going to redo Via Verde.
Yes.
What about a small part of Via Verde that's in LA County? Is that going to be redone also?
We are actually coordinating with LA County to get that done, and they have indicated that they would like to have that completed. And that was pre-COVID-19, but we are working with them to get that completed. Okay. We work with our residents in the school district and the sheriff to address traffic safety concerns. We have streets with 25,000 or more vehicles per day and streets that have 300. As our population and traffic patterns change, we have to implement and adjust the tools we use to provide our public safety. This means learning and keeping up with new regulatory standards and requirements. Increasingly, a larger and larger part of our staff time gets dedicated to meeting a growing number of regulatory compliance requirements from primarily state agencies. Several of the agencies with requirement compliance are listed, but an example would be the city's trash contract with Waste Management. There are several assembly bills that require stricter mandates for recycling inert materials as well as organic or food waste. Implementation of ordinances and tracking methods required to bring the city into compliance with these assembly bills has been and continues to be challenging and time-consuming. A couple of examples of the assembly bills: AB 341 requires mandatory commercial and multifamily recycling. AB 1826 requires commercial and multifamily organics recycling. And SB 1383 requires residential organics recycling. So those are some of the programs that we're going to have to implement in the next year or two. Another example is on our stormwater compliance. We regularly spend over $150,000 annually just to meet compliance requirements, water quality testing, and filing of reports. Another service provided by Public Works includes management of the public right-of-way. We manage all permits in the right-of-way, which includes utility and new developments, to make sure that the work conforms with city standards and municipal code requirements. For instance, the Saddle Creek development, which Henry discussed earlier, it's the development that's on San Dimas Avenue, south of Allen Avenue, has 28 homes, had $1.6 million worth of public improvements that Public Works reviewed and inspected. The Brazada development, which is north of Foothill, north of Cataract Avenue, had over $10 million in improvements that involve Public Works review and inspection. Those projects are ongoing and involve inspections. Public Works also oversees the maintenance yard facilities and fuel management operations. We work with the other departments to provide comprehensive fleet management and order and outfit new vehicles for the city. While the fiscal year is not quite finished yet, we do plan on completing or being in construction with $5.2 million worth of projects. I've listed some of the projects here, which are Avenida Entrada, the Bonita Traffic Signal Synchronization Project, or slurry of zones 1 and 2, which is north of the 210 freeway. And we've installed EV charging stations at multiple locations in the city. And we should be going into bid shortly on a commercial street alley. Of note, of the $5.2 million in capital improvement projects, $1.7 million is coming from grants. So we will be reimbursed for $1.7 million. For fleet purchases, we purchased and outfitted 3 pickup trucks and 1 backhoe this year. We've also worked with Edison on a project to convert 3,100 streetlights to LED lamps, which we will bring approximately $20,000 in savings in electricity each year, in addition to being a green technology. We've received about 300 calls for service and filled approximately 2,400 potholes. We've installed approximately 114,000 linear feet of striping or pavement markings and repaired about 500 locations of sidewalk, totaling about 12,000 square feet. When we look at our infrastructure inventory, signs are a small proportion of the cost, but we have a huge impact on the serviceability and safety of our streets. We replaced 485 regulatory signs and 128 street name signs. We've also issued 275 encroachment permits for work within the public right-of-way and performed over 900 inspections. Also, I do want to mention during the COVID-19 pandemic, our staff worked with utilities to issue critical permits and continue to provide inspections as requested. We developed new protocols to minimize risk to our employees, yet maintain services for our residents. One of the procedures developed by our street superintendent was a vehicle disinfection procedure. We also created safety kits for each vehicle with mask, gloves, and Tyvek suits. We continue to work with waste management to haul away an increase in debris that has been deposited in the right-of-way through the COVID-19 pandemic. I am proud of the Public Works response to the pandemic and believe it shows the quality and dedication of our employees. These are our responsible general fund cost centers. Also on here, I've included Fund 12, which is our infrastructure fund. We have several capital projects in the past have been funded out of Fund 12, as well as we have some of our ongoing maintenance projects funded from Fund 12. However, due to the economic impacts from COVID-19, Public Works has moved as many projects as we can to the restricted funds wherever possible. So these are our salaries and services and supplies costs. Much like planning, our annual salary has gone down due to personnel turnover. We're down about $88,000 a year because of longevity and the number of personnel. The number of personnel has not changed actually from what was proposed. And this includes the $88,000 in reduction includes having all of our positions funded. Okay. Services and supplies, so you know that some of there's some asphalt. It's electricity for the maintenance yard, and some consultant services for stormwater management. Capital outlay this year is for a wash rock maintenance and catch basin maintenance within the yard. Here's our proposed list of capital improvement projects for next fiscal year. The majority of our public works projects are paid for by restricted funds. Okay. These funds are typically audited to ensure that they are spent only on authorized work. Many of the funds, though, are sales tax based and are subject to financial impacts from the down economy. For instance, the gas tax and Fund 2 and Fund 77 are based on taxes from gas sales, and they will be impacted in this economy.
No, is Covina Boulevard in the county?
No, Covina Boulevard is from the 57 freeway to Arrow Highway. So there's actually you'll have that section of Covina Boulevard. It skips. We did the section from the high school about 10 years ago, and then Badillo Street is funded on here as well. So that whole section of roadway will be completed.
So let's look at Villa Verde, look at Covina. What out of our funding, how much are each one of those going to cost us if we went forward with them?
I'm sorry, if we went
forward with these projects, what's
Okay.
it actually physically going to cost us?
Okay, so that project involves we are working with the county to try to include some of their projects. If county doesn't come through, and then it'll probably be around 2.3 million.
Out of our pocket.
Out of our pocket.
Sorry, if I could just make one confirmation of the statement. If we're talking, Emmett, are you specifically talking about general fund revenue or source of revenues to fund these projects, or are you just talking about general costs?
No, general fund project.
Yeah, so what she's presenting here, none of those projects from Fund 2 over would take any general fund money. These would be paid for with the funds that are generated from those restricted funds.
Okay.
Now, the Fund 12, the BDO was actually budgeted this year, but that's mostly funded with STPL funds. So other grant sources are going to be paying for that. And the goal line relocation, the 150, would be reimbursable from Metro. So
Villa Verde and Covina would basically cost us nothing.
Right,
As far
so
as
we
general
can,
fund money.
right, so we're looking at these projects being able to be completed without any general fund revenues or reserves being used to complete these. But we would be draining these restricted funds quite significantly by completing these.
Super, thank you.
I'd like to make a comment on that, if I could. So this is John, and so I'm looking at the line item budget, page 23, which is the gas tax fund, 02, and it's an example of a fund that, as you're saying, you might use. So, saying it's not going to cost general fund any money is a little like saying, well, it's not going to cost Emmett any money, but it's going to cost me a lot of money. And if you look at the balance that we had left in Fund 02, kind of like a reserve, or what's left over, let's put it that way. If you look back 2 years ago, it was over $2 million. And, no, 1.2 million, sorry. So, and then at the end of this current year, we're looking at about having $600,000 left over. At the end of next fiscal year, because of various projects, we're looking at a balance of $300,000. So, although those funds are restricted to street projects, you're still paying money for them, and it means that you don't have that money for future expenditures. And so that's just something to realize. I'm not saying it's a bad idea to spend that money now, because as Sherry and everybody would say, it's good to get these street projects done, or it's going to cost us more in the long run. So I'm not having that argument. I'm just saying we want to go into it with eyes wide open, that each one of these funds is like that, where we are drawing down what we have in them, and so we won't have that money for street projects in 2023, 2024, that kind of thing, that the money just will not be there at all, or to be a tiny amount. So just wanted to lay that out there for everybody to think about between now and next week.
Thanks, John.
That's definitely a consideration. Another consideration is we are drawing these funds down to the point where we are depending on money coming in next year to pay for them. So that's something we'll have to consider when we actually go out, before we go out to bid or come back for award, to make sure that the funds that are coming in are consistent with our projections. Okay? So also I did want to mention that on Fund 12, where it's the infrastructure fund, as Michael mentioned, the 1.897 million is most of it's coming from STPL funds, which are federal monies that can't be used for it can only be used for street projects, but they'll reimburse in our general fund with those STPL monies. So about of that $1.8 million that's shown there, about 200,000 will actually come from our general fund. And part of the requirement for us when we get our SPL monies is we have to have a local match. It's about a 20% local match.
That's a great deal.
Okay. So for the funds that are restricted to road repair, we receive approximately $2.5 million a year once administration funds have been transferred out. To maintain our streets at our current condition, we need to spend approximately $3 million per year. Okay. And if we want to make our streets better, then we have to spend even more than $3 million. So talk about that in a little bit, in a couple slides. In past years, councils moved general funds into Fund 12 to help us pay for larger projects. Over the last 5 years, there's been an average of a little over $1 million spent on street projects from Fund 12. For this past year's budget and for the next year, Public Works has removed most of the capital and projects and non-reimbursed projects from Fund 12 to try to offset some of the revenue losses from the COVID pandemic. So equipment purchases that are proposed, this also comes from from the general fund. So Public Works manages the fleet. 2 of those trucks are going to Parks and Rec, and 1 is going to Public Works, is the way this worked out. But we are proposing $91,000 in vehicle purchases for the next year. And we have a list of all the vehicles. We have 42 vehicles in the city, and a number of tools that we maintain. But the vehicle replacement is, we have several older vehicles that we're trying to move out of our inventory and replace with newer vehicles. And we have that planned out for about a 5-6 year period. So for department changes, Public Works is not proposing any new staffing. What we are requesting in this budget is to fill all our vacancies. Okay, with Gold Line ramping up, the assistant engineer will be able to provide additional inspections and plan checking capability. This position also plays a key role in bidding and managing capital improvement projects. The senior office assistant is a key position that will help us respond to service calls and permit requests. The position also assists in keeping track of our progress with regulatory compliance requirements, especially those concerning solid waste and recycling. The fleet mechanic services the city's fleet, not just Public Works fleet. The mechanic also maintains most of the smaller tools and equipment used by city's maintenance crews. Without this position, the maintenance crews have to portage their vehicles to get repairs done. They have to keep track of the service schedule, and they have to track their own oil changes. So for major goals, well, not a goal. The goal line is listed first because of the significant impact it has on our work plan. This is the light rail system for the audience. This is a light rail system that is proposed for the north side of the city, extending from Glendora through the city's downtown to Laverne. We've had 26 plan checks since late December, along with numerous requests for information or meetings. Public Works reviews the Gold Line documents and will inspect the work to ensure compliance with city standards, which are arguably more expensive than what would otherwise be installed. In the end, our residents have to live with what is constructed by the Gold Line. Staff wants to ensure the Gold Line improvements result in the least impact and the best outcome for our San Dimas residents. The city primarily has jurisdictions at the Gold Line crossings. There are 7 crossings in the city that will be closed over the next 16 to 18 months. Although that closure schedule has not been approved, but that is a significant amount of work. And even without the closures, with the closures, no 2 adjacent crossings will be closed at the same time, but there will be concurrent work at multiple locations in the city. There's also significant work at San Dimas Avenue and Bonita, and at San Dimas Avenue and Commercial Street, which is off-track improvements. The latest discussion with the Gold Line, and which again is not an official schedule, has traffic signal improvements going at Commercial and San Dimas Avenue next spring. The other major impact is the Gold Line has notified the city that they will be acquiring the city's maintenance yard for the Gold Line parking lot. Relocation of the city's maintenance yard will have a major impact on all maintenance and field operations. Finding an alternate yard location will take a significant amount of time and resources. Finally, as a goal line, we'll be reclaiming their right-of-way in the park and ride lot. This is the parking lot on the west side of San Dimas Avenue, just north of Commercial Street. These parking lot services the bus transit patrons. The lot will need to be reconfigured with usable, to be usable without the right-of-way property. The reconfiguration design is in progress, but we still will lose approximately 5 to 7 parking stalls. We'll be moving forward with our capital improvement projects. We are slated right now for $8.6 million in CIP projects using primarily restricted funds again. The stormwater grate and filter project, shown on there, will be an ongoing project over the next several years where we will install grates and filters in most of the city's 900-plus catch basins. This will improve our water quality and help us meet stormwater permit requirements. We have several arterial roads budgeted for next year. Via Verde Avenue, Covina Boulevard, and Badillo Street are extremely deteriorated and need repair. These streets see each approximately 16,000 to 20,000 vehicles per day. The repairs on these streets will impact a large number of residents and commuters. I wanted to show you a slide of our maintenance system. Pavement management system. This is a status summary of the condition of the streets within the city. It's a little difficult to read, and I apologize on that. On the upper left is the actual condition of all the streets within the city. So we have a pavement condition index, what's called, of 58. Okay. The overall trend is that our streets have been deteriorating slightly each year. As a comparison, the PCI, the state average PCI, is a 65. The lower we drop on this pavement condition index, typically the more expensive our repairs become. So we want to try to keep our pavement condition in a higher level. In the center of the graph is the pavement conditions broken down by the functional class of the street, whether it's arterial, collector, or residential. The functional class is determined by the number of vehicles traveled on the roadway and also by our general plan. Okay. With next year's projects, we'll increase the PCI of our arterials, which has been our focus over the past couple years. So these two over here on the left side right there. Can't get that for you. Over the next couple years, we'll begin to focus more on residential streets, which is on this side. Most of our residential streets are over 40 years old, and many are in need of repair and not just a slurry coat. We use the pavement management program to provide a guideline to optimize what streets to schedule for repair first. On the right is a graphic depiction of the pavement management system that gives the pavement condition of every street in the city. While we will be aggressively trying to get grants, or we will aggressively try to get grants to help pay for our street rehabilitation. Just to stay even and stop the downward trend, we need to spend about $3 million a year on pavement rehabilitation. However, to get to a better pavement rehabilitation or pavement condition, say of 70, we would need to spend approximately $4.7 million per year. Okay? And to get a pavement condition of 75 would be about $5.4 million. With the projected budget shortfalls, we need to aggressively go after grants to find the gap and to fund the gap in the $2.5 million we have coming in from restricted funds and the amount needed to bring up our pavement condition index. Another goal of Public Works is to enhance our existing or develop new management systems to optimize our service. We have several systems in place that we use currently. The pavement management system is one of them. We have also implemented Excel permitting program, which allowed us to operate more efficiently during the COVID-19 response. Our focus will be on implementing the systems we have and using them to the fullest, as well as incorporating some new systems. For instance, we use about half the capabilities of the Excel permitting system right now. There are online capabilities and reporting capabilities that will help us to be more efficient and better serve our communities. The other major system to implement is the work order asset management system. This is slated for implementation this year, but has been slightly delayed. This will help us see what calls for service we have and what needs we have for maintenance of our infrastructure. It will also make us more efficient in use of crews and will provide a better tool for budgeting replacement work. I know I've gone on a long time, but I just want to touch base on the last two items. With a combination of staff turnover and new regulatory requirements, our staff must operate efficiently and keep abreast of changes in regulations. We do that through training, and both external training opportunities as well as internal training. Our goal when sending an employee to a training class is to have them come back and train the rest of the division on what was learned. Training is an important part of meeting the increase in demands and regulations. It also provides a way to develop employees to prepare them for the next level. And then finally, Henry touched on the topic, but collaboration. Collaboration is more important than ever. We need to work seamlessly with our other departments to help our community. Whether it is a business or a resident, they have to navigate through these new times filled with regulations and other obstacles. We are here to move them forward and to help them meet the city standards. This concludes my presentation. The next department will be Parks and Rec.
Sherry?
Yes.
On your 3 vacancies,
Yes.
okay, how long have each one of them been vacant? Your senior office assistant?
So the senior office assistant, we have not had one. We took over trash from administration at the turn of the new fiscal year, so that has not been occupied.
Okay.
Fleet-
Assistant engineer?
Assistant engineer, Brandon Slater was promoted to associate engineer, so he was promoted, I believe, in February.
So it's been vacant for what,
3
2.5
months.
months?
3 months. And the
Okay, mechanic?
fleet mechanic's been vacant for May 15th, since May 15th.
So just a couple of weeks?
I'm sorry, it was April 15th. So he's been gone a month.
It's 1 month, okay. Okay, thank you. Oh, I did have one extra question. Is when we look at the lighting, on the lighting budget that you showed, the lighting district, you showed $510 for lighting projects?
Yes.
What project is that?
So there's a Via Vic Carroll lighting project. It's about $350,000. They have some, it's a LS2, which means we own the street lights. Edison provides electricity. We own the street lights, so we have to go in and replace all of the street lights. They're pretty dilapidated. And then
Are we talking about the poles?
Yes, the
Okay.
street poles and lamps. And then there's also $160,000 for the decorative street lights, the Nostalgia series in the downtown. It's an ongoing annual project that we try to.
Is any of that money being used for the community parks, or has that
Yes.
already been budgeted?
Yeah, no, that's been budgeted for this year, but yes, this for the Civic Center Park will be coming $250,000 from this year's budget, from Fund 7.
Okay, but 510 will be for next year?
Yes.
You'll have that, okay, thank you.
I had a couple questions.
Go ahead, John.
Okay, first of all, I liked the pavement condition index dashboard that you showed, and that would be great to have on the website someplace.
Okay.
But that was just a nice view of things, and gives a quick indication of how the pavement is doing, or is improving, or slowly unimproving. The second one, I didn't quite understand. Did you say under the gold line you were mentioning the signal at San Dimas Avenue and Commercial?
Yes,
Did I hear you say they were going to start working on that next spring?
yes. We
Wow.
are,
And when is it going to be actually installed?
well, they have not given us an official schedule yet, but the discussion was that they were going to try to do it in March. So they want to order the poles now to be able to install it in March.
That's great. Now, how much is that costing us?
Zero. It is part of the
Got it.
gold line improvements.
That's nice. Okay, that's great. The last question I had, just for the moment anyway, was I noticed a line item on the line item budget, and it was for graffiti removal on page 19. And I noticed that this year's budget was going to come in at about $66,500, which was because we got a new outfit doing the work, and they're doing it a little bit more proactively and everything else. But I saw there was only $10,000 for next year's budget. Is money coming from someplace else, or are we cutting back on that, or what's that all about?
Yes, actually, we're in a transition period. Well, the Public Works will be doing some graffiti removal on signs, on our own street signs, so that's what that $10,000 is for. And then Parks and Rec will be managing the graffiti removal budget. And it's in there, it'll be in their cost fund, or cost center.
All right. That's great to know. And I don't know, and the budget, is very familiar the way it's laid out, and I like it. But that particular thing, I don't know if there's a way of now indicating that the budget, just so that people who are looking know that it's moved over to another department or being shared by another department, something like that.
Okay.
Just a general comment about everything that, moves from one fund to another, or that kind of thing.
Okay, like a differences slide?
Yeah, and we can include that in a future presentation that actually shows, what we're trying to do is get, Parks and Rec manages that graffiti contract, so we want to get the cost centers in the right departments, but we could add a slide that shows that it's not eliminated from the budget, but moved to where it moved to. So.
Yeah, great.
Sherry, just a quick question. How is our street sweeping process working by leasing them or hiring them out?
It appears to be working fine. We keep a sweeper on hand so that we don't incur overtime charges from the street sweeper, the contract street sweeper. So if we do have an issue, we send one of our crew to do the street sweeping just to try to keep the costs down. But it's been pretty effective.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, staff. It's a pleasure to be here tonight, this evening with you to go over and review the Parks and Recreation budget. Before I jump into the slideshow, just like to take a minute to make you aware of how we come to our budget. How we arrive at what we arrive with numbers and identifying, where we believe that the needs are. So the budget process is more than the preparation of a document that appropriates funds for a series of line items. Good budgeting is a broadly defined process that has managerial, planning, communication, financial dimensions. So Parks and Rec use this process to incorporate our long-term goals, also set and establish links to organizational goals, focus budget decisions on results and outcomes, so it's outcome-based management, promote effective communication with stakeholders, getting commissions, key players involved in hearing them, the pulse, what they say and what they feel is important. Also, I think my colleagues touched on this, which is to provide developmental opportunities for employees. Now, this budget proposal captures those 5 points noted above in conjunction with the city's mission. So the city's mission is what drives, again, our decision-making process. And if I could just take a minute to go over that, or to just paraphrase some of the city's mission, which is the city council and all city employees are committed to well-maintained facilities and being responsive to the needs of the residents by providing necessary programs. So Henry talked about guiding principles, and Parks and Recreation also has some guiding principles, and those are all noted along with goals and strategies in the budget proposal that was presented to you. So Parks and Rec has different fund sources. One is the general fund, then there's the restricted funds. So let's talk first, or I'd like to first share with you the general fund expenditures or budget proposal. So Parks and Recreation has 3 divisions, which include landscape maintenance, facility maintenance, and recreation services divisions. Altogether, we have approximately, currently we have 20 full-time staff members. There are 10 regular part-time, and sometimes they're in the summer season, this summer being an exception, we have close to 60 part-time staff. This is just a quick snapshot of what Parks and Recreation does, and then just, you know, we have a saying that is, it doesn't just happen. So there are people that are taking care of these tasks, staff, team members, employees of the city of San Dimas who are dedicated individuals, and they do their best. So last year our budget was about just under $8 million. That included general fund and restricted funds for CIP projects. The city has 177 acres of landscape space, which is manicured and maintained spaces. This does not include open spaces like the northern foothills or those parcels of open space above Horse Thief Canyon Park and even within Horse Thief Canyon Park. So these are areas that we maintain. The Recreation Services Division served about 12,500 people. The data here is a couple years old, and we just had an issue retrieving some of the data from the prior year, but we believe that last year, based on the information we have from our aquatics program, which was a stellar year, that we exceeded that by far. The other thing is that Parks and Rec does is we maintain public facilities, which is the civic center area, the Martin House, the Walker House, and other park restrooms and facilities throughout the city. Last year, the council appropriated about $2.8 million for CIP, capital improvement projects. And this slide here just shows some of the projects that were done, that are already completed. So you have Lone Hill Park, which has tennis courts before and after. They were resurfaced, and Ladera Serra also before and after, resurfaced. And at the Splex, the JV and varsity fields were renovated, and you can see the process going on here. These are some of the projects that are still in process. So Ladera Serra is getting a new playground structure, and it is beautiful. It's almost complete. The first layer of rubber surfacing was put down, so the next layer is basically the color. But that should be good to go in less than a couple of weeks. It'll be ready for use. This picture down here is kind of a rendering, and that doesn't do anything for it. Doesn't do it any justice. It came out really nice. Now the Civic Center Park here, so you may have noticed that equipment is now missing, and we removed it, one, for the fact that there are playgrounds and those amenities were closed due to the order from the county. But you can also see that it was in disrepair here. So we removed it, and this site will get a 24-piece outdoor exercise equipment and a shade structure over the top of it, so it can be used at all times of the day. The Arrow Highway Median project, which starts at starts at Valley Center on the west and works its way through all the way past Walnut Avenue and to the city boundaries. That's this project here. That project began this Monday, and it will be completed in roughly 60 working days. Next is the Via Verde walking trail or walking path. That was broken out into 2 phases. Phase 1 has been completed. They were moving the fence today to begin phase 2. This is a picture of the new surface. So this side on the west side is what was done. Actually starts here and goes to this spot right here. So phase 2 will be the eastern side of the park, but it also looks great. So some events, obviously pre-COVID-19 pandemic, we were able to have the Halloween Spooktacular and the Holiday Extravaganza. Both of those events were very well received, and speaking of the impact that our PIO has had in working and collaborating with Parks and Recreation, the number of Facebook likes for the Halloween Spooktacular, so 253 individuals indicated that they were going, 2,300 individuals indicated that they were interested. 45,000, almost 46,000 people were reached. So big outreach there. The mascot video, which you may recall was that race between the mascots, that got 1,500 views. It had an overall reach of 2,500 people. The Holiday Extravaganza had an overall reach of 56,000 people, with 3,600 people indicating that they were going or interested in going. And the tree lighting itself reached over 1,000 people and 580 views. So those are those 2 events, and we were very excited about that and looking forward to, in collaboration with other groups in the city, we were looking forward to hosting another run, 5K run, which we were looking at partnering with McKinley, and they were very interested in participating in that, but that obviously had to be canceled, along with some of our other activities. However, during this time, staff has responded spectacularly, and what they have been doing now is increasing our human services in the aspect of serving our seniors and also those who are disabled. The senior lunch program, which normally had about 60 regular participants, is now up to 175. This is a picture of how they're coming through, and 175 cars are coming by, or individuals who each get 5 meals. This is all in part with the San Dimas Cares project. And then also the Easter egg basket delivery, which they delivered 1,100 gift baskets to children out in the community. So this is a slide to show the different funds that are used from the general fund for Parks and Recreation, and broken out by fund: facilities, civic center, senior center, park maintenance, parkways and trees, recreation, and the San Dimas Recreation Center. You can see there's changes across the board, most of which are negative. There's a large one here, which is at the senior center, and that goes back to the fact that we are trying to, put the right staffing and personnel and charge it to the right fund. So, for example, the senior center did not reflect any personnel cost in years past, and now it does. It actually reflects the staff who are working there, the full-time staff who are working there, and that's why there's that big jump there.
So that's mainly staff that's
Correct.
up to 102%?
Correct. That accounts for the coordinator and the specialist and any other support staff in there. Overall, our department total this year decreased by 2.1%. And this is just a different depiction of that. This is a little more into the weeds here to notice where those most notable changes are. And going back to what Councilmember Ebner asked about graffiti removal. So graffiti removal is here. This $127,000 increase, $66,000 of that reflects the graffiti contract. The remainder reflects a custodial maintenance contract, which Council will be reviewing next week as staff comes to you to make a recommendation to hire or procure the services of a different contractor. Personnel increase change is $40,000, and in your budget proposals, there's a more detailed breakout of how and why this change is there, because we are moving people, staff, employees to the areas where we need them most. So, for example, since Karen's departure in November, Brad has been, there's been a vacancy there in facilities, and he's been, working very hard and diligent to make sure that nothing is falling through the cracks. And so we propose, rather than hiring a new facilities supervisor, which is a vacancy, is rather doing a restructure or reorg and moving another supervisor into that spot from another division. And then there are 2 requests for new hires. There's a recreation supervisor, which would be a second recreation supervisor, and another coordinator, making it 4 coordinators. And kind of going back to the old cliche, I guess, it's that you feed the efficiencies and you starve the deficiencies. So as we did an assessment and looked at everything through cost-benefit analysis and outcome-based management and all of those things, we saw, in order to increase our performance, where we felt that the community gets a lot of bang for their buck, and also to enhance the services being provided, that it would make more sense to have that recreation services division enhanced, and then move some other employees around in the other 2 divisions to make that work out. Looking back to see all these increases here, but keep in mind, please do keep in mind, that our overall budget is 2.1% lower than the year before. This is just a slide here that kind of breaks it down a little bit more for you and for the public who may be watching, is that we break it down by division, and you can see the total here by division. From the general fund. And I should make that, I should make that more clear, because here, for example, park maintenance and parkways and trees, this is only about half of the overall budget because another $1 million comes from the assessment tax, the parcel tax fund 08. This is a snapshot of the projects being proposed. All of these projects, there are some funds put into these, which funds 21, 22, and 23 were designed geographically to be able to take in Quimby fees in accordance to that law to make sure that we are capturing the funds where that development or that improvement took place. So that's why those funds are set up. Typically, Fund 20 is a catch-all for park projects. But this year, I'm working with finance and Michael Bryant more specifically. We talked about doing it this way to better track expenditures geographically, and so that then you can sort of forecast and look back, take a look back to see how and where the funding went to what areas. Fund 12 is the infrastructure fund. And these projects are all outlined here for you. But just to kind of point out, 150 is for the surface improvements. So this year, we're doing Horse Thief Canyon Park Trail, as well as San Dimas Avenue trails. And you will also be seeing that come as a staff report next Tuesday, as staff is recommending to award a bid to the lowest contractor. $400,000 is for the Foothill Boulevard median landscape improvements. All of these projects are outlined in detail in the document that was shared with you, so that you can see the justifications and the reasons why. We, Parks and Recreation, feel these projects are important. The other 150 here is for the urban forest reforestation. This year we started funding in order to, kind of close the gap on the trees removed versus trees planted that has been taking place for the past several years, which equate to more than 1,100 vacancies. We just wrapped up the new inventory that West Coast Harbor has performed. So those locations have been selected or identified more clearly, those 1,100 plus vacancies, and we will start filling those vacancies in the next couple of weeks with the funding that was set aside in fiscal year 1920. And then some different projects here, which we can cover if you'd like to know a little more, but like I said, those are broken out in more detail in your budget proposal presented.
Are you making improvements to the dog park?
Yes, there's money set aside here for the dog park. So this is for trails and dog park. $50,000 is for the dog park. So some of the fencing there is in disrepair and needs to be painted and fixed.
What percentage of your urban forest restoration, you said you're going to use money you already have set aside for that for this current budget. What percentage of that is going to be of your 1,100 that you're missing?
So because we believe it's important to not only plant a tree, but to also have a young tree care program associated with it, because the first couple of years are the most vital to the success of a tree. And when having done my studies with regards to tree mortality, if you don't take care of it, or if the homeowner's not invested in taking care of this tree, there's a high chance, probability that it's going to die. So rather than just plopping a tree in the ground and leaving it for the sake of maybe the neighbors to water it or the heavens, we set up a program with the contractor who then waters it for a year every week. They'll come by with their truck and they water it. So to answer your question, with the 100,000 gets us about 150 trees, 24-inch box trees. So it would take, if we did 100,000, 150, do the math, I guess it'd be I don't know, help me out, 10 years? Somewhere in there, right? Maybe 8 years. But keeping in mind that every year trees are dying. They're not just, so more and more trees are going to die. As you saw on San Dimas Avenue today, we had to remove a large oak that was decayed. That been in the ground for a long time. But trees, are living things, and they actually go through that life cycle just like we do.
And just another quick question. As you know, I'm very, very supportive of the city doing a special event, National Night Out, and I am very supportive of the Arbor Day. But I guess I wasn't expecting a bill of $20,000. It says that they've had events, up at Villa Verde Park where I didn't think it came anywhere near that, and where they got people
Sure.
donated money and stuff. 20,000 just seems like a big number to me.
Well, keeping in mind, Mr. Mayor, that when we discussed it at that study session, I think it was, you said give us a number, right? So we did meet with the Sheriff's Department and with the Heroes organization to come up with a program. Now, if we want to make it hit it out of the ballpark event, like I believe the council was expecting, there are some costs associated with that. We can't get everything, donated. So it's a educated estimate, commonly referred to as a WAG by us. But it's a very good estimate that in conjunction with getting the sheriffs, and Captain Berg is here, he can attest. We spoke about even having the helicopter, but if the helicopter is not available, then they need to staff it, right? And so those are costs that we would be picking up. The National Night Out is probably 18,000 of that 20. The 2,000 is for the Arbor Day. So, and if we don't spend it all, which we will try to really be effective and efficient with the public's funds, that it would sit there till the next year and be rolled over if we didn't use it all.
Give me just try to put this in perspective. What did it cost us last year to do the extravaganza?
So,
I know there are two different events, and I realize that, and one's
yes.
bigger than the other, but just
Sure.
give me an idea.
So, Recreation Division Manager Tim Pagano's out in the conference room out there, but I believe that event was, if you take into account everything that was brought in and procured, rented, it was about $65,000. Now we got, that does not account for staff cost. That's just the equipment and stuff, right? We were fortunate enough to get close to $20,000 in donations. So the event probably was more like $80,000. So, okay. Tim, if you would.
Tim, I was just wondering, trying to get just a thumbnail, not a thumbnail, but a more of a dollar value of what the extravaganza cost us last year.
Sure. Director Kisteman's estimate of around $65,000 is correct. I'd like to bring up the fact that we were very aggressive in getting sponsorships this year, which estimated around $20,000 in sponsorships to offset that cost to the general fund as well. So while the cost in total was $65,000, in reality it cost us to the general fund about $45,000 just because of the effort made by the Recreation Division.
So not the $80,000 that Hector was talking about. Okay. All right, I just was trying to get a thumbnail thought of National Night Out versus, what we know was a knock it out of the ballpark.
And the 80,000 is probably relatively close, but we were working with our production company, and that was probably the initial estimate that we received from them as far as to have that, very well thought out event. We worked with them because we expressed to them our desires to put on a great event for the community, and they were able to pare down costs to the point where we got it to 65, and then we went out and aggressively sought sponsorships to bring it down to the 45,000 that I referenced before.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Does the number that you just talked about for National Night Out include staff costs?
That's correct. It does.
And then the number you're talking about for extravaganza excluded staff costs?
To a certain extent, because a lot of the staffing costs that was associated with the holiday extravaganza, we did kind of already have that base when we were going into the budget cycle and everything. So that was already accounted for. What we were talking about as far as the 85, then the 65-45, that was all the M&O costs that were associated with that event.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
I had a comment and a question. John here.
Go ahead, John.
So yeah, appreciate, Hector, you're looking at the staff and personnel, looking at the roles that need to be done, and using our existing people to fill those roles and get the department working, the way you and your staff feel is best. So I think that's great to do that kind of a thing. I think that's good for everybody. I do want to ask, though, about funds 21, 22, and 23, similar to what I was mentioning about the gas tax, and I know that you're using some gas tax money too, but those park funds, I mean, we're not really getting a lot of Quimby fees into them. So where is, I noticed in the budget, on the line on the budget, it looks like maybe it's like a placeholder because everything is in the red in all those three funds after the year's over. And obviously that money's got to come from someplace. So where is that money coming from?
Sorry, John, this is Michael O'Brien to help answer that question. So if you're looking on the first page, that summary, budget summary, where we have those negatives, there are some Quimby fee left over in those 21, 22 funds, basically $77,321 in Fund 21 and $193,870 in Fund 22. So the remaining amounts to fund all these projects would basically have to come out of general fund reserves. So basically in Fund 21 to fund the projects that are listed there, it would take about $992,679 of general fund reserves or revenues to cover that. Fund 22, an additional $146,130, and then $390,000 in Fund 23, because currently there's no fund balance in Fund 23, so that'd be strictly general fund numbers coming to take care of that gap.
John, could you repeat those, or
Michael,
could you repeat those numbers that are coming out of each, would be coming out of general fund for 21, 22?
Sure. So Fund 21 would be about $992,679. Fund 22 would require $146,130, and Fund 23 would require an additional $390,000.
So those are another example of money that we're spending. I like the idea of putting those in those funds, because then you can see that the various parts of the community are getting, kind of equal, or over time anyway, they're trying to get equal treatment and equal attention. And I'm supportive of so much of what's in there. Just, again, want to realize that there's no free money here. It's all coming from someplace, and spending it now means we can't spend it later on. That's the only thing. Just, again, not arguing the pluses and minuses, because by and large, I think everything in Hector's budget is great. I just want to have that on the table, though, when we're discussing things.
Yeah, and then if you include Fund 20, there would be a remaining balance of $196,663 that could either be held for future year projects or could help offset some of those figures I just gave you. So just depending on our strategy of how we want to use those funds.
Yeah, I see that. Thanks, Michael. That was Michael.
Yeah.
And also, Hector, could you give us a little bit of a better rundown on the rec center improvements?
Absolutely. So I actually have a different document prepared that will be presented next week, probably. It really breaks it down, but we're talking about roof repairs, for example. Some of the components, the assets or the amenities, the structure, it has not really had the proper funding put aside for it. So we are looking at having to replace, for example, an air conditioning unit that feeds or conditions the men's and women's locker rooms, as well as the student union room, which is where the high school teenagers go, and that has been inoperable since the mid-90s. So there's roofing issues that I mentioned where Nothing has been done since 1979. There are bathrooms that need new tiles. There is also the boiler, the pool heater, the doors, the leaky walls that then leak into the racquetball courts because they're no longer sealed. What else is there? There's a lot of stuff, and I didn't bring that list with me, but I have it all listed, and you'll see that next week.
So $700,000 is a Band-Aid, is that what you're saying?
$700,000. I mean, it's an investment, I think, because buildings are very expensive, as you know. To build a new one of those would cost you about $20 million. Now, last year we put some money. This year, we put some money. Council allocated some money to it, and lots of repairs were done. And some of these things are like, I mean, they're not. We just want to give it a different color paint. I mean, it's like it really needs it. So we're not making things up. But between this year and next year, should it be funded, it really will make a big difference in that place. And like I mentioned earlier, our aquatics program last year was spectacular. Not spooktacular, but spectacular. And with revenues being kind of like hit it out of the park. Jeff Freeth and support staff did a wonderful job. And that was because of outreach and just going out there and trying to do things, thinking outside the box. However, there's a point where folks aren't, they're not going there because it doesn't meet their needs, or they just don't like that, or there's, another place they go to. But I think that it would make a big difference for something that does serve the community quite a bit. The number of people that go there, you'd be surprised. It's also used by Bonita Unified School District. So the high school has their water polo and their aquatics programs there. So that place, when aquatics and all that comes back, we can get back in the water, they're going to need a place to go. And so, I mean, it's a lot of money. I mean, $700,000. But when you think about a structure that could, if assessed, was probably worth $5 million, $6 million. I mean, as council will have to help us out there with that, make that decision.
Do you think that knowing COVID-19 the way it is right now, do you think there's going to become any use out of that facility through the summer?
Well, I think what we're hearing right now, and Brad shared something with me today from a call with city managers of different communities and when they're rolling out their programs. In speaking with other surrounding communities, there is a desire to really get back going, and people are getting very creative on how to do it. And so I'm just, I understand, I believe it's like through July, but with the weather the way it is in Southern California, we could actually program that thing if we really went into it once opened and good to go to the max. I think we're capable of doing that and seeing a pretty good return on investment, which is, more than in years past. I guess we could be more aggressive that way.
I understand what you're saying about return on our investment. We realize that it's a very, or I realize that it's a very well used facility. But looking at our budget and looking at things going, would there be any measure that we could that we should look at is not closing it for the year and saving that money?
So, that's there's a lot to unpack in that question, because even keeping it, just say you close it, you really can't close it because you can't drain the pools, right? Because then you're now creating even more problems for the plaster and the pipes and all of the stuff. So you need to keep a certified pool operator out there, keeping it, in check. There's still, you got to keep the lights on, you got to have water, and so there are still costs associated with that. The emergency fund The emergency budget that you'll see next week will point that out. You'll see the difference there. But it's still, still a good chunk of change, all things considered.
Yeah, let me make it clear. I've had nobody say, what about closing it for a year or anything like that. And, I heard some rumors just around when people were just batting things around, but I've had nobody walk up to me and say, you guys need to close that or anything like that. I just, I'm just, quite honestly, I'm looking at numbers. And that's a huge number.
Understand?
Okay,
Yes.
and so, when I start looking at that versus some of the other things that folks want, that number just pops right out at me. So, okay, well, thank you.
Okay. And finally, this is a comparison of our restricted fund budget in 1920 compared to our proposed budget 2021. There is an 8% increase in that. So earlier I mentioned 2.8 million or so. So that was in starting with Fund 12 down this way, because Walker House, like those are separate funds specifically for the Walker House. And you can see here that there's a big increase here, right? From the year before. This year, because it needs to be painted. It's like in dire need of paint on the south-facing walls. And facilities manager Brad Stewart reports that every time we get a good rain, there's water inside the walls. So the landscape parcel tax, as discussed, is this was back in the 2000s, I believe, when the city passed this, the residents of San Dimas passed this. But as costs continue to go up for doing maintenance, cost of maintenance, cost of doing business keeps going up. So there's some general fund going in here to subsidize that. The golf course is its own entity, and then these two districts here as well. So all these aside, taking these into account here, it's about, I think, $2.5 million in projects. So, yeah. So, any questions on that? I think this is the final slide, actually. So, again, we can look at this and say, do we purchase a scissor lift to take care of our lights inside our buildings and in our facilities? Or do we rent it, or do we contract out services for that? I don't know, you own a piece of equipment, you own it, it's yours. There's a cost of maintenance on that, and it depreciates. This Toro Dingo is this thing here. So it's a front dump, trencher, rototiller, all the, so the reason for it is because our performance metrics in our turf fields, our sports turf fields, we're trying to get here from here. So you saw the improvements on the softball fields at Splex. Marchant Park was before that. And this coming year, we're proposing to do the 2 baseball fields at Splex. Well, staff has to then maintain it from that point forward, right? So that you don't find yourself again having to redo it in a couple of years. So this here would help us be able to maintain the fields, and along with this. Now, what's an aerator? It's the thing that pokes holes into the grass. Well, in order for grass to be healthy, it needs oxygen, and so you poke holes into it and put fertilizer down and water, and that, lo and behold, you get nice green grass. So that's what that is. That's it for me. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Hector. So, based on the preliminary budget, this is kind of the slide that Councilmember Ebner, Mayor Bader were talking about, that shows all the negative fund balances in some of these restricted funds, which Michael O'Brien indicated that are going to have to be funded through general fund. None of it is free money. As you can see with the list, the negative balances on the right, include the landscape parcel tax, which Hector mentioned, infrastructure, open space 1, 2, and 3, and equipment replacement. And then also drastic special fund balances reductions in Prop C and Measure M. So I wanted to highlight that, but we kind of already discussed this earlier on. And then the final slide is the balances for the successor agency, successor housing, and housing authority funds and ground totals. So with that, that concludes our presentation. It was a lot of information. Would like to, does council have any questions that we can?
You know, just a housekeeping matter. I was watching all the monitors, okay, and at no time could anyone see who was speaking. So next week when we do this again, could we have the directors, when they get up there, say, you know, their name and what they're, you know, who they represent. I mean, I know that we know them, but like when one director was finished, he said, I'm going to leave it to Sherry, or I'm going to leave it up to Henry. Okay, but maybe it'd be good just to have that person say, you know, their full name, or not, you know, not their full name, just their name and who they represent, what, you know, Parks and Rec or something like that.
Yep, will do. So with the presentation and Councilmember Vienna kind of addressed this at the beginning that he would like to continue this to the next meeting. And in order for the staff to kind of go back to the drawing board, whether it's this meeting or next meeting, we'd like to get a little direction on what you guys want to see. You guys, we tried to present everything which was requested on projects that we feel are important to the city, but moving forward, what your comfort level is with using reserves, whether you want to only do critical projects that possibly could reduce increased cost on infrastructure down the road, but get a little bit direction so we have a kind of a target at where we should go and try to develop a budget. We can go back to the O&M, but a lot of the costs are in projects, general fund projects, as you saw with all the negative balances. So any direction that we can get would be great, and we can go back and present you guys another preliminary budget.
I'll just ask a couple of questions, I guess, on one is, are you actively recruiting for the 8, I think I counted, vacancies?
No.
All right. I would ask, and I don't know what the general council consensus is, but my preference would be that you hold off on hiring any of those positions until council makes some further decisions as it relates to the budget. Those vacancies, I'd be curious what the number is with salaries and employee benefits. If those positions were frozen, what does that number come out to? So I'd be curious what that number is. Mike can run the numbers.
Michael might have that in a second.
Oh, well, there you go. The second thing is, you know, I got to be honest, you know, this exercise last year, this is a markedly different presentation, I think, that I've seen from staff. And that's not a, go ahead, Mike.
I don't have the exact number in front of me, but we did do the calculations there that try to come up with scenarios of how we can generate some sort of savings through staff reductions or not filling vacancies. But if I recall correctly, it was around the range of $430,000 if we didn't fill in those positions.
Okay, all right, thanks. So my point is that this presentation, I think, was really good, and I appreciate all the work everybody put into it, which is why I would be more comfortable taking some time to digest this. To be frank, to be fair to the work that was done to this, what's unique to me about this is, in the past, you know, we'd get a nice presentation of wish list things, and it was very easy to pick from, you know, and scrap things. But in this case, staff presented some very high level, very strong things, I think, that are not very surfacey at all. As a matter of fact, there's some very deep things in each department I think did a good job in pointing out what those specific needs are for the community and for their respective department. Obviously, I don't know, what the consensus of council will be, but I think there's a lot to consider here. So I want to make sure I do my part to really understand what was just presented. So thank you all for everything you did on that.
Dennis?
I thought staff did a very good job. I think what's going to happen, though, is that the budget's going to have to be cut. And even though a staff member may think there's two priorities, they're going to have to decide which priority is more important than the other one. That will help us make a decision in the end.
Okay.
John?
Yes, in general, I think there's going to have to be some hard decisions, and some of the projects and things that we all like, individually especially, are going to have to be looked at. So I would, I know that next week, Brad, you were saying we're going to have the emergency budget, which that'll be interesting to see how that stacks up, and I hope there's like an easy way to see what's taken out and not being done in the full-on budget compared to the emergency budget. I think that's the idea for next week, right? You're going to present a bare bones kind of budget?
At the council's direction, we can present that bare bones budget or get feedback from what you guys get from this budget, and then based on that feedback, can use our emergency budget and in your comments and come back with a proposed budget that kind of meshes them both together. Once I get a better feel for where your comfort level is on reserve levels and what projects you want to move forward.
All right, John, may I say something?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what I was kind of getting at was that's a great idea. In that sense, there almost needs to be kind of a way of comparing the three things that we're talking about: that bare bones budget, the full-on budget we just saw, and then something in the middle that you're going to give us. Because there may be some things in the emergency budget where we just don't realize, with all the line items, what might be available to not do. But I would, one challenge I would throw out for my part would be that, just as an example, the equipment that we were thinking about getting, and it looked like there were 3 trucks, and then there were the 3 great items that Hector was just talking about, that, if you had to pick 2 out of those 3, what would you pick? Or 4 out of the 6, let's put it that way, if you want to look at all of those together. So I would like to see what that would do. So it's not like cutting everything out, but it's like what can you do with 2/3? The same with, and I'll say it as the primary tree lover on the council, that I know we want to plant 150 trees or whatever that number was. And I told Hector before the election that I wanted to plant 1,000 trees in the next 4 years, which would be 250 a year. But we may want to do the same kind of thing where we're trying to plant 150, maybe we see what 100 is going to look like. And then the only other thing I'll say is I saw that we were going to be trying to get some revenue, or the idea was get revenue by raising dog license fees and certain things from the Humane Society. And I'm not for getting revenue that way in my own preference. But there's a lot of things to do this. I wouldn't want to cut everything out, but one thought anyway, is that we do use a lot of reserves this year, or some amount that's kind of up there. Maybe not the full-on $5 million or whatever it was the biggest hit, or $10 million, but we use a lot this year just to get these things done, and then throttle back the year after if we find out that things are really not going, not improving. We always have that session that we do in the fall or late fall to see how things are going, and that session will be even more important this year with the things reopening and hopefully revenue picking up again. So those are some of my thoughts.
Thank you, John. Eric?
I completely agree that this is a massive amount of work, and I just want to thank staff for putting it together. It's a lot. Like Mayor Pro Tem Vieta was saying, it is a lot to digest. I think overall my philosophy when it comes to the budget is that there's a lot of unknowns right now. I would be okay spending some reserves. That's, I mean, it is a rainy day and a rainy day fund, and right now it's raining. So that's what that's there for. I would just, I would like to see something that kind of protects, while it utilizes the reserves, it also protects it to give us something to fund the city in the future, because we don't really know how long this the effects of COVID-19 are really going to affect the economy of the city. So something more balanced, I think, would be what I'm interested in. Something between the bare bones budget and what we just got.
All right. You know what? I would echo everybody's thoughts. You guys did a heck of a lot of work in a period of time, But I can tell you right now, I'm not at all looking at 22, 23 of keeping $200 and some odd $1,000. That's would be insane on our side, and definitely irresponsible. But earlier I heard I'd like to have a chance to go through this. We didn't get it till fairly late this afternoon. Actually, we got it probably 1 or so. I don't know. That's when I remember it. And I tried to look at it, and there's a lot of more information than I can saturate. And then we talk about an emergency budget. We have a council meeting on next Tuesday, right?
Yes.
So what I'd propose is that we come in an hour early, and you get the feedback that after we've looked at this, and then propose like a Wednesday or Thursday, have another study session to handle your emergency bare bones budget. That's what I'd like to see, but I'm open for any.
Are you saying come in an hour early to start our council meeting an hour early?
No. Come in for a study session, but televised study session at 6 o'clock to get the feedback from after you've reviewed the budget, and then schedule the emergency budget for like Wednesday night or Thursday night. So we come in at 6 o'clock on Tuesday night for the council meeting for a study session, but televise it, and then do the council meeting, and then on Wednesday do the study session to talk about the budget.
Weren't we scheduled to come in early anyways on Tuesday?
We were studying.
Come in at 5 o'clock.
So yeah, schedule for a study session, and just I'm trying to figure out the turnaround time. So once we get information from you guys on Tuesday, in order to prepare for Wednesday, it is not doable to be able to get the information out to the public, like Mr. Inderly said. That's why I'm trying to. We can have a study session and present the emergency budget, what's different from this budget, what we've cut, and then also get your feedback overall, and then that would give us enough to probably come back at a different, not Wednesday or Thursday, because it's going to take some time to revamp this whole budget, but the following week or the week after that to present what we think will meet your guys' needs and your desires.
Yeah, I have no problem with that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that the schedule actually is pretty good. We've got a 5 o'clock study session next week at before our regular city council meeting. We've got 2 more meetings. I honestly think that we don't need a special meeting. I'm willing to do a special meeting if everybody else wants to. But I think by the first meeting in June, with our comments on next Tuesday's study session, which is a 2-hour study session, and we can even go far longer after the regular meeting if we wanted to. But that would probably give staff enough information to really come up with a solid budget that fulfills our wishes, still subject to minor tweaks on the next meeting. But Emmett, maybe you're thinking that should be like a special meeting where we give our final direction. Is that what you're thinking?
And John, or Councilman Ebner, I think that is doable. We can present the changes in the emergency budget, get your feedback, and then really present a draft budget because it's going to take some time to go back and redraft the budget. At that June 9th meeting, either you guys are going to feel comfortable with it or not. If you don't, we can have a special meeting that week of June 14th, and then present the proposed budget for adoption on the last meeting in June. This would give us, because we're going to get a lot of information after the council meeting on Tuesday, this would give us a good 2 weeks to redraft this, make sure we get the information out to the community when the agenda goes out, and just give us some time. Because I think once we hear that info, we are going to be able to propose a budget that you guys feel comfortable with.
Thank you. That sounds good to me. How's that sound to you, John?
I think that's a great idea. It really gives them time to. So next week we'll have a lot of numbers in front of us, and we've got 2 hours at least to really delve into it and wrestle about what things we want to do or not do. And then, they'll have almost final direction. They can put together a budget in the next 2 weeks and really present something solid to us. And as Brad said, it is important to get it out to the community. And it'd be great to get it out to the community more than just the 3 days that we're required to get it out to the community. I'd like to get it out there a week beforehand, at least some ideas so the community knows what they're seeing.
Yeah, as we all know, these are unprecedented times, and people are asking questions, and because many of us have said this is going to be pretty pretty drastic in what we're doing, because we sales tax down, gas tax is down, everything is down. So I believe that's going to. Dennis, you got it? You okay?
So
Eric?
Oh, sorry. And maybe before I just want to get clear direction. I don't want to spend 2 hours going over all this information. So the presentation on emergency budget isn't going to be a full-blown presentation. It's going to be broken down to what's different from this budget to the emergency. So directors will talk about their department and what the differences are. So I'm hoping it's a handful of slides so we can have more dialogue and less presentation, because this one was so long, if that's okay with you guys. Does that make sense?
I'm just finding out we got to be here at 5 o'clock next week. I missed that on my calendar. So whenever I see that calendar invite, maybe I'll know about it. But the other thing is, though, for the mayor, I was just curious if we wanted to allow people in the community to call in and say anything. They normally would be here, and we've been pretty participative about letting people.
You mean tonight?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
But John, after we give the public an opportunity to call in, then we'll go to council comments, and then that's when you can use your time to say what you wanted to say.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. All right. You know what? When we take this opportunity, if you wanted to, if members of the public would like to call in and ask any questions, the number's on the screen. We'll give it about 2 or 3 minutes to give you an opportunity to call in and see what happens.
Thank you for calling. You're live. Hello, you're live. Can we make an announcement to have that call back?
The caller who just called in, could you call back? We've evidently lost your call, so please call back. We'll give it a couple more minutes here.
And just remember, when you call in, you're 30 seconds ahead of what's on the TV or on your streaming. So don't wait for something to happen on the stream before you start talking.
Okay, hearing none, no call-ins, we'll open it up for council comments, and we'll start with John.
Sure. Just three things actually. One, I noticed there was discussion about making the streaming video higher definition, and so for everybody who's been talking about that and asking about that, I know that our staff's working on that, and hopefully within a month or so, we might have a better quality look on the stream so people can see those charts and everything else. Secondly, I know the mobile home accord has been extended just due to the crisis and everything, but there has been some talk in the mobile home parks anyway about whether the current formula really fits in with the low rate of inflation and consumer price index increase that we've been seeing the last few years. So just to those who have called about that, if you're watching this, know that we are looking at that, and we want to make sure that we get that right. So we'll be talking about that with, Ann Garcia is working on that. I know Brad's on top of that too. So that was just one thing. And lastly, we're in the middle of the COVID-19 crisis, and that's why I'm not there. But there is going to be, in the pretty near future, reopening of restaurants, as an example, for dine-in, for people who can dine in the restaurant. And I think that the city of San Dimas should be proactive in looking how to help restaurants get as many people as they can with all the rules that will be in place. And one thing that I know I've heard some cities are doing, and I'd like us to take a look at it if we could, and that's to use outdoor space. So cities are either using parts of the street, the parking lot, or alleys or sidewalks, whatever. A couple examples that come to mind that might work for, and obviously there's lots of restaurants, but you take Twisted Sage, or Olive Garden, and there might be some parking lot space that could be repurposed temporarily, and obviously staff has to work with the restaurant on this, so we can have outdoor dining with the tables far apart like they're going to have to be. Ditto for downtown restaurants, where Sweet and Savory would count in this, Pizzettos and others. We could use that space between, right by the Feed and Grain, the sidewalk outside, kind of a little plaza area near the clock tower, and also the kind of the alleyway that used to be an alleyway there. And, I'm sure Pizzettos wouldn't mind sending their servers down to that area if they can get more people to be able to use the restaurant. So I think there's some are even talking about closing off streets to do this and let the restaurants use the street on certain nights. So I don't know how far we want to go, but I think this is sort of like an idea that maybe our staff can look at and see how we can make sure that the restaurants can get as many diners as possible, because I'm telling you, people are going to be hungry, to coin a phrase, to get out and eat out as soon as the restrictions as soon as the prohibition is lifted and there's just the restrictions. So that's one thing that can be kind of exciting, I think, if we can help our businesses out that way. And that's all for me.
Thanks, John. Eric?
I've got nothing else tonight.
Thank you. Ryan?
I got nothing.
Oh, my God. Dennis?
That's all I can say is that I think your staff did an excellent job tonight. And I think the community is very lucky that we've been so prudent with our budgets in the past that we have such a reserve that we can use a little bit of it each year to maybe even things out so it's not so drastic. And stay healthy, everyone.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment that last weekend, being Saturday and Sunday, that the county health department was in town going from business to business, checking to see if they were obeying the rules. And as of right now, I haven't heard one business that, one, was upset that they were checking, and two, that the county did not give them a good posting and say, put this on your window and you're okay. So our businesses, especially in the downtown and up on Foothill, are playing by the rules. And so we got nobody looking at us, sidelined, so maybe we can start getting on with life. But I also want to remind people that the city of San Dimas, although we can be stricter than the county rules, in all of these things. We cannot be more lenient. So people call daily wanting to know when we can open up their businesses. Why are you doing this? Why, you're the mayor of this city. The Long Beach mayor is doing it, but it's a whole different world. The Long Beach mayor has a health department that he has to deal with. We have the LA County Health Department, and we have to play by their rules. So, but you rest assured that Brad and the other staff members are talking to the county daily, knowing that they want, we want to get it opened up. Our golf courses are finally open. They have special rules, but I understand that golfers are out there in both facilities. And just in closing, I want to say that I really liked what John was proposing about being a little bit open-minded about tables, letting businesses, when they start opening, be a little more flexible with putting some outside dining in, some ideas. There are some restaurants that have, they're in parking lot areas, and maybe let them, put a couple tables out there if they get permission from their management of the parking lots or the shopping centers. But that just is probably a very good idea to allow people to be able to get out. And so I really support what John was saying, and I appreciate that.
Mr. Mayor, can I add one last comment?
Sure.
Just for clarity to the community, I have to give John Lee and staff appreciation. Part of COVID-19 obviously was social distancing, and John Lee and staff were able to help with another historic moment where I have the first city-issued iPad. Actually, council's got most of them. I was able to get it provisioned today with John's help, and I'm actually able to get my agenda now electronically. I actually have a pen that I can actually highlight, which is a super cool technological advancement. And it also allows us to be able to telecommute and use things like Zoom and WebEx. So it's a pretty momentous accomplishment here. I thank John and staff for doing that, and I think the rest of the council members, I know he's got some of them there. And when people ask, part of this, as I was talking to John a little bit, I think this will assist us in the future, obviously in these challenging times with COVID-19, with social distancing, telecommuting and remote work, and the savings that we're going to realize in not having to have print. So I actually went and got this out of the back just in case, but moving forward, barring any sort of thing that can't fit in the scan, then I'm probably not going to need a printed agenda or packet anymore. I'll have basically the same thing everyone else has online. So I just wanted anyone to know, if you see the iPad here in front of me, it is a city device, and I'll be using that from moving forward. And thank you, staff. Thank you, Mayor.
All right. Thank you. When we adjourn, we'll be adjourning off to a study session, staff presentation. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. We're going into a closed session, public employee discipline, dismissal, and release. Number 2 is conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9 D2. We have one case. Okay. We'll reconvene the city council meeting. Just coming out of closed session, we'll have a report from the city attorney, Jeff.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The City Council met tonight in closed session to discuss the two items on the agenda. One public employee discipline dismissal release and one item of exposure to litigation. City Council discussed those items, but there is no legally reportable action tonight.
Any comments from the city council? None. Move for adjournment. Good night.